So yes,
All
yeah,
right.
thanks. Yeah, as Adam said, yeah, we're from Easy Weddings. Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, I'm Mel, and I'm joined by our brand manager Beck, who will be sort of taking you through this webinar together. Yeah, it's been awesome. You know, we're really humbled to be invited to do this session, and it's awesome to hear that we have some expectations to live up to because of this very well attended session. So yeah, no, we couldn't do it without you. So thanks so much.
Wonderful.
Go on. I wasn't sure if you wanted to keep talking, Adam. Yeah.
Well, Beck, I'll hand the time over to you. So Mel is she's a newly wed bride herself with a background in journalism, public relations. She's co-edited the 2023 Australian Wedding Industry Report with Beck, also introduce in a minute. Before joining the Easy Weddings team, Mel was a communications manager at funeral startup. Beck Crozier has more than 2 decades of marketing experience in the wedding industry. She's got a passion for content, brand, and design. She also has her finger on the pulse when it comes to current wedding trends, which we're going to hear all about in a second. And Beck has compiled each edition of the annual Australian Wedding Industry Reports. So we have Beck to thank for that great report that comes out every year. So with no further ado, I'll hand it over to Beck and Mel.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam. Thanks all of you for that awesome welcome. Yeah, so I'm just going to step through a little bit about who Easy Weddings is, just to get anyone up to speed who's not familiar with the work that we do. And then we'll dive into some of the research that we completed at the end of last year, so that you can all come away with some solid takeouts as to what working. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were just on mute, but I've unmuted you. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so you'll have some takeouts as to what working in the wedding industry in the future will be like as you venture down this beautiful road of becoming a celebrant. A little bit about Easy Weddings. I've been with Easy Weddings now for 10 years, and the business is 23 years old. I was actually one of the first clients of Easy Weddings when Matt and Contrita Butterworth started the business out of their garage in the year 2000. They were getting married. The only thing around at the time was the Yellow Pages. And Matt was an IT guy who was looking for something to sink his teeth into, to apply his new skills, and planning a wedding without the internet seemed like a wonderful opportunity. So it was a business that was born out of love, and for 23 years they've loved this business very much. And so that's what's made it become Australia's #1 wedding marketplace or directory, whatever you want to call it. It's much more than a directory now. It did start as literally like the Yellow Pages online, specifically for weddings. So we've built this up now to a network of around 5,000 suppliers across all different categories, you know, from cakes and photographers and to yourselves as celebrants and many more other services. We estimate, it's a pretty good estimate that we are seen by 80% of engaged couples around the country. We've got 8 million listing views per year on the site, and couples have left 287,000 reviews for suppliers over these 23 years. So as I said, the marketplace is kind of the original kind of engine of Easy Weddings. It's where suppliers, wedding businesses come to meet the Australian engaged couples, and they do this by utilising the 23 years of testing, really, that we've been doing on what makes a really successful way of presenting your business that leads to the most connections with the right couple. So that's kind of the heart of what Easy Weddings does. We've got a few other different sort of side business models as well, but that's the main thing. And we also have a mobile app. So as well as the computer or desktop based way of interacting with the site, couples can also plan their wedding on the go by downloading the app from the app stores.
Some of the cool features with the app is like you can sort of book, couples can bookmark their sort of preferred vendors and come back to them later on. They can save, who they've booked, keep a budget as well, so that they can kind of keep track of their wedding budget and things like that. So it's quite a handy resource, and it's a free app for the user to download and muck around with. So yeah, that's how it works. And this slide's me. So my role within Easy Weddings is I'm sort of the communications person that connects all of our wonderful businesses to our bigger business. So they call that the B2B sort of person. So that's me. So basically my job is to keep sort of supporting our business community with some resources. I host webinars like the one that we're watching today, just to keep our business community in sort of in touch. I also put together informative articles about sort of best practice sales and marketing techniques, that sort of thing, and that you can find that on our we call it the Pro Education Hub on Easy Weddings. So today, we're just going to be talking you through what our industry report is that we keep mentioning it, some stats from that. We'll sort of have a bit of a deep dive into what weddings and couples look like this year and next year, some of the buying behaviours of millennials and sort of younger, sort of older Gen Z as well, who are our target market, and just a general overview of some trends and what that means for your own sort of personal branding and marketing. And just looking at some stats about Celebrants in particular, taken from that report. So the report, if you'd like to have a look at it in more detail, you can access it by if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to our landing page where you can submit your details and your email address, and we'll email it out to you. So basically, we surveyed last year about 3,500 couples who were either currently engaged in planning weddings or had recently got married, to find out how they plan their day, what motivated them, how much they spent, that sort of stuff, their pain points and what they enjoyed about the process. We also took some information from the 280,000 reviews that our couples left for suppliers on our network. We also did, we polled our 47,000 Instagram followers for various questions as well. We took in some ABS data on marriage data from them, and just generally some general data from couples who use our platform to compile this report. We put it out every year for the last 8 years. At a glance, the industry was probably around about 146,000 weddings last year, and we predict around about 139,000 weddings will happen this year, and then it will sort of take a bit of a dip in 2024 to about 122,000. Obviously, we've had a bit of backlog with COVID and things like that. So, but currently the landscape of the Australian wedding business is probably about 40,000 Australian wedding businesses across different categories, celebrants, florists, caterers, venues, all that sort of thing. And the average couple, it's around about 31 years old. It's sort of, the age is coming up a little bit the last few years, obviously, again with COVID, people are waiting a little bit longer to get married, but it's around about the sort of late 20s, early 30s year olds. And in same-sex unions, the age is generally a little bit older, around 33 for women and about 36 for men. Beck, do you want to talk about the average costs from here?
Yeah, so each year we're able to gather significant data on all of the different wedding services, how much couples spent on each service, to come up with a national average, which this year is sitting at 34,715 as a national average for the cost of a wedding, which excludes the honeymoon. So yeah, it's a significant amount of money. It's a significant investment for couples. The cost has obviously come up now from the last couple of years during COVID, where it did take a little bit of a dip. And I think that 34,000 even surpassed the 2018 figure as well. But you can see there, in whichever particular state that you're in, the variations in the average cost of a wedding.
And this data, sort of just for like sort of transparency, we sort of, it's a reflection of, it includes the registry weddings as well. So the numbers, you know, might be a little bit, you know, obviously a registry wedding is going to be a lot less expensive than, you know, a sit down meal and that sort of thing as well. We also don't have data for those big ticket weddings where they would usually hire planners and spend like, I don't know, maybe Beck, you can talk a bit more about this, but these are the clients that use Easy Weddings. So people who would have those big weddings with those expensive planners wouldn't use our website. So we don't have the data for those sort of $200,000 weddings. Would that be correct, Beck?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they're kind of the exception, not the rule. So this is, you know, the average Aussie couple, how much they on average would spend. All right, so I'll take you guys through who the average Australian couple is, what they do, what they look like. For the first time ever, they are meeting on Tinder or other dating apps more than any other way. And, you know, obviously COVID played a little bit of a part in that, as they weren't able to get out and meet through their normal connections. So it'll be really interesting to see if this trend is kind of a one-off or if it does continue on. I think it's pretty much, yeah, the norm these days. Most of the couples are getting married for the first time, which is wonderful to see. The average engagement period is 22 months, which is quite, you know, a long window for planning, and we'll get into the significance of that in a moment. The average number of guests that they invite to a wedding is sitting at 92. Typically in past years, it was always around the 100 mark, 98 to 100. Last year, the invite numbers dipped as a national average to 80, so significantly fewer. So it is nice to see that it's sort of crept back up closer towards that 100. Interestingly, they're still inviting 30 fewer guests than they would like to. So there's a few factors there that are playing into that, and we'll look at that again in a moment. If you just pop back for 2 secs, Mel. The wedding party sizes, the most popular size is 8 or 10. So even with elopements playing a bigger part in the last couple of years, couples are telling us they're still wanting to have their key significant people in a wedding party. And we've already touched on the average cost there. So then, this is interesting data. When are the couples getting engaged? What never changes is that 6% of all engagements happen between Christmas and New Year. So that festive season, that end of work potentially period is a significant time of the year where proposals are happening, where the commencement of that 22 months is happening. 15% of engagements are happening in the month of December. So even outside of Christmas and New Year, December's a really popular month. And then depending on what's happening throughout the year, as far as public holidays, long weekends, we've noticed that proposals tend to happen, you know, around holidays like Easter, Labor Day, or it'll be the King's birthday now, but in the past, Queen's birthday. So that's why January has always been a very significant month in the wedding industry for businesses and suppliers to be sort of ready, open for business, with everything lined up, ready to take on all of the excited new couples that are coming through. As far as how they're choosing a wedding date, largely it's based, or the number one reason is based on their favourite venue's availability. So that's the first thing that they seek, is where are we going to have our wedding? What date have you got? And that's how they set their date. Second to that, couples are also factoring in their favourite season as a and thirdly, the third most popular reason for choosing a date is that the date itself has special meaning. So whether that's an anniversary date of when they first started dating, or if there's couples that are interested in the numerology of dates, like last year it was 22-10-22 was the most popular day of the year for weddings. One of the questions we ask and that we can continuously very keen to know about is how our couples want to communicate with us and be communicated with. Overwhelmingly, it is email. Unfortunately, they're not that fond of the telephone. Perhaps more so for first contact, but also having a written email trail, I think, is one of the reasons that email is popular as well. Often couples will create a new wedding specific Gmail email address, for example, so that they can keep all their communications in the one spot. So this is just important to know, just from a strategic point of view, when you're starting to get out there and understand how to communicate with these clients, but also recognizing that phone and SMS can play a part in it, but just perhaps not in that initial stage that you might think, but more of a support role.
We usually recommend that that suppliers respond to the couples in the way that they reached out to them. So like as Beck said, in the initial, obviously if they're making initial call, you obviously pick up the phone, but when you know, if they've sent you an SMS, you know, it's always good to reply with an SMS. If they've sent you an email, reply with the email. And a lot of the times we find if an inquiry comes in through our platform and the celebrant or supplier will reply to the couple through email, they will also send a SMS as well saying, hey, you know, thanks for reaching out. I've just responded to your email. Just check your junk folder in case it goes there. You know, can't wait to talk to you, kind of thing. Just keep it short and sharp, just in case it does go to junk or they've forgotten, just so it's top of mind and that you're kind of covering all bases.
So a look to 2023, when all of the weddings are going to be happening. It's always interesting to know which are the months in the year that have 5 Saturdays, because couples are still preferencing Saturday weddings the most. This year, April, July, September and December each have 5 Saturdays. And across the year, the most popular month for the weddings will be September, followed by March and April, and then leading into October and November. So it's kind of makes sense, but I think as well, depending which area you're from, like this is a national snapshot. It will have a little bit of variation depending on the state that you're in due to climate.
Yeah, obviously spring and summer are the most favorable options, particularly in the cooler states.
And the other thing we were keen to know is what stresses couples the most about planning a wedding, so that we can, you know, empathize with them, understand, be in their shoes. At the moment, and it's probably not surprising at all with cost of living concerns, 23% which was the highest response, said sticking to a budget was the most stressful part of planning a wedding. 65% of couples said that cost of living concerns had affected their budget. And the fact that that couples invite 30 fewer guests than they want to is another cause for stress and concern and worry, because they're wanting to invite these people, but have to sort of cull them from the list, either because of budgetary constraints, and then more recently because of travel restraints. Something that also never changes year to year is that couples seem to spend this magic number of 26% more than their original wedding budget. So they've never planned a wedding before. They've got no idea what they're in for. They'll hopefully never do it again. So it makes sense that they're not going to really be across all of the expenses that's involved. Keeping up with tasks, dealing with family members, and finding reliable suppliers are on the right of that graphic there. The thing that Easy Weddings aims to do is to keep that last point there, finding reliable suppliers, as low as possible, with all of the different elements that the company's tried and tested over the years to make it an easy and seamless experience for couples.
Beck, just a question from Mike in the audience, who's asking, has there been an increase in people getting married during the week? We certainly saw that during COVID. Is that continuing?
Yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of a continuation of that trend moving into this year and next year. But the thing that but couples are still telling us they want the Saturday wedding as well. So it is a little bit hard to tell at the moment. I think being ready for the midweek weddings is a wise idea, especially with the cost of living concerns and budget being the number one stressor. If midweek weddings are in fact the cheaper alternative, and for many vendors that is something that they offer, then there will be those couples that's a key decision-making factor to go for the midweek wedding. Okay, so finally in this small section, the top 3 buying influences. And speaking of cost, the number one thing that our couples want to see that influences them to buy is that they were able to see with transparency how much the services cost. So, you know, I think in the industry it can be tempting, and it's probably a commonplace practice for suppliers to conceal how much they're charging from like a competitive standpoint, but the couples themselves need to be educated on how much things cost. And if things are in their budget and you're in their budget, then why not be upfront about it and show them as early on in the process as possible. So on Easy Weddings, we've got a mechanism where you can actually set your average price, and that at least gives, from that very early research phase, an indication, okay, this is how much I'm up for a celebrant or my flowers or whatever the service may be. The second top buying influence is having relevant photos, showcasing your business, showcasing your couples, which of course, as you go along, you'll be able to gather more and more of that material. And we'll move into what makes a relevant photo in the next section. But the third one is gathering positive reviews so that couples can jump on to a platform that, a review site, including Easy Weddings, and read what other past newlyweds have said about the supplier. It just helps to build that trust.
And to what Beck said earlier, with the pricing, we recommend, it might be a price range that might be a bit more achievable for a supplier like a Celebrant, or perhaps 2 or 3 different pricing packages. I know that when I planned my wedding, the Celebrant I went with had like a micro wedding or a everything, you know, she had two different packages, you know, micro package and a everything package, and the prices were clearly labeled of what you get with each thing. So that could be something to consider. Just sort of weeds out the time wasters. If people only have a budget for $800, $1,000, whatever it is, and you charge, I don't know, $1,200, $1,500, they know straight from the outset that they probably might not inquire with you, and you know, it sort of cuts out that time going back and forth. So we're going to talk about a little bit of trends now, and Beck will sort of mention, you know, why it's important. I might as well just start talking this slide and then you can take over. So
Sure.
Couples are, you know, church weddings aren't that popular anymore, but still the option that 11% of our couples pick. Parks and gardens and outdoors and beaches. Obviously, if you're in Queensland, your percentage will probably be a lot higher. We're also finding in like WA with like a lot of wineries and that sort of thing, that's a bit more, you know, you're going to have a bit more than 80% there. But on a national landscape, those sort of outdoor settings seem to be quite popular. And obviously, the reception venue is by far the most popular choice of location. As I said, garden or outdoor weddings, in terms of in terms of the location, that's 18%. Wineries, as I mentioned earlier, are quite popular, especially we'll talk about it later on. You know, rustic sort of style is quite popular, has been for quite a few years. So wineries, you know, have got that, create that beautiful backdrop to complement that style. Water settings, farms and barns, again, to complement that sort of rustic feel. And the ballroom is still kind of even for those last few categories, but that's, you know, quite an even split. Beck, do you want to talk about the sort of other sort of trends that are happening?
Yeah. So when it comes to the second most important buying influence, being that a supplier can showcase relevant photos to match the vision that these couples have got in their head. So you get engaged, you jump onto Pinterest, you start to get an idea of what resonates with you, what the current trends are, or perhaps you've been to weddings in your social set as well. So choosing photos that the current cohort of couples coming through are loving, that are on trend, is really important to be able to just, you know, from a marketing perspective. Even though as a celebrant, it might not be as relevant as, say, a stylist or a florist, it's still really key for any business in the wedding industry. So as far as colours go, the number one colour, which is a little cliched, I guess, but white and neutrals is the number one wedding colour for 2023. And either as a hero colour or an accent colour, followed by green and greenery. So greenery being lots of green foliage, and then green making its way into other aesthetic elements of the wedding, bridesmaids' dresses, table decor, stationery, and so forth. And pinks is always in the top three. Wet pink and wedding pretty much goes together, but at the moment that's more popular as an accent colour than it is as a hero colour. So when you're scouting out, when you get to that point later down the track, when you start to put together a website or a social media account or even a listing with Easy Weddings, scouting out the photos that best represent the most on-trend things will be something to consider.
And our data shows that couples will select their suppliers based on, you know, a vibe that matches their own vision for the day. So if your sort of branding is on trend with what couples are sort of planning for their own style, they're more likely to book those suppliers.
And then as far as the actual themes, so not just colour, but what style of wedding couples are going for. Rustic is the quintessential Aussie wedding. Rustic's been number one for the last 7 years. It's just our way of life. So choosing photos that include a rustic wedding, Second to that this year, the modern minimalist wedding is kind of a newer style that couples have embraced and are embracing. So more a pared back style, clean lines, a more monochrome color palette. And third, most popular theme and style is the romantic theme. So more delicate fabrics, lots of flowers, softer pastel colors. Those three themes make up the majority. They're pretty close together of what couples are wanting for their day. And then you can see significantly behind that is the classic style and the bohemian style, which is sort of trailing behind a fair way.
Now I'm going to take you through some trends, particularly with where celebrants are concerned. So we've got a whole section in our industry report that sort of talks about all the different stats for celebrants. So I'll come at the end of this and I'll show you the link again that you can download the report and take a look. But I'll just take you through the main points. So at the moment, there is just under sort of 10,000 registered celebrants in Australia currently. And these celebrants have told us that they spend about a third of their revenue on marketing and advertising, which is quite a lot of money. So that's, that could be Facebook ads, it could be, Google, that sort of thing. And they spend about 16 hours preparing for each wedding. So just, it's really important to factor that into your pricing structure as well. You might think that, couple hours prep here and there and turning up on the day is sort of what you want to quote for, but realistically it's quite a significant amount of hours that go into these weddings, getting to know the couples and preparing their love story. 43% respond to inquiries within 24 hours and 41% respond within 1 hour. So most of our celebrants are responding quite quickly. 89% just do weddings, while 11% do funerals and other events. And I was talking to Jean offline about, the journey of a celebrant. Do they usually start with weddings and do they move over to funerals later on in their sort of career? And her advice was to be prepared that question might come up at some point. And I'm sure she might have mentioned to you at some point during the course as well, to be prepared for that conversation as well. So something to think about. Now we've just taken a sort of a national snapshot. As you can see, the 815 is the average cost of a celebrant in Australia, but obviously different states have different average pricing, and we've found that it's sort of gone up about 6% from the year previous. So you can just have a look at your state and sort of get a general idea of where you sit. Most couples, so in terms of what couples are looking for from their celebrant, overall, they want a celebrant who's warm and who's funny. They're the biggest sort of key factors that couples want from their celebrant. They want someone with a sense of humor and that can sort of build that rapport with the couple. Having said that, couples do value a strong attention to detail by their celebrants. So if you're not a person who's particularly organized, or that's not where your sort of your strength lies, perhaps lean have some other sort of resources in place for to be able to sort of manage those the admin or that sort of thing. But in terms of stats, 88% of couples will book a civil celebrant. Half of them want to write their own vows, or about a third like a mix of traditional and personal vows. I know that with my own wedding, we did a mix of traditional and personal as well. Unplugged ceremonies are becoming something that most couples are really into. It's where they ask, well, usually it will be the celebrant will ask on the couple's behalf that all guests should turn their phones off, and we want everybody to be present at the day to capture the event, by them, with what's going on around them, and not to sort of take selfies and stuff, because that's obviously why they hire spend a lot of money for photographers to do that for them. So yeah, be prepared that might be a conversation that you might have with your couples. Do you want me to make that announcement? Do you want, what's your plan? And yeah, Zoom. Zoom, as we know right now, we're enjoying the convenience of the Zoom. But couples, especially, you know, they're busy, they're working, they might not have you know, the time to sort of go out and meet with a celebrant on the weekend or whatever, and they really enjoy that convenience. They can just pop on a Zoom call after work and spend 45 minutes or whatever it is, and just, you know, get to know their celebrant that way. What they say. So this is what our couple said, that they've, in the areas that their celebrants have excelled and where that they could improve. So what they've done well is it was stress-free, effortless. The celebrant was engaged and lively, and without sort of being over the top and dramatic. They, you know, really connected with the couple. They also offered MC services on the side. So, you know, again, be prepared. That might be a question that could come up, and potentially you might need, you know, if that's something that you want to pursue, you know, you might need some, you know, additional sort of personal development in feeling, you know, more confident talking to people. And yeah, as I said, celebrants that offered, you know, FaceTime, Zoom, that sort of thing that were a bit more flexible was something that they couples valued. And yeah, and just, you know, having a lot of flexibility in the vows, and adding that personal touch was important. And being open to cultural traditions as well, and sort of elements that they'd never heard of before, but being open to that was something that was important. Ways that celebrants could improve would be and having enough lead time to sort of share the draft with the couple, and making sure that they're comfortable with what they've got. Someone said that they got it 2 days before the ceremony. If that happened to me, I would have been very, very stressed. Being really rigid in personalizations. I know as a guest, a family member had a church wedding, and she was a little bit upset that there was a lot of restriction, that she couldn't have, she didn't have a lot of personalization in her ceremony, which she was a little bit disappointed about. Being pushy again about following tradition. It's their wedding, not yours. So, you know, have a bit of flexibility. Taking too long to respond without reason. So as we said before, 1 to 2 days seemed like the norm. So, you know, think about that. That's what the other celebrants are doing. And went off the script, you know, you know, you can obviously tell why that was not a good thing to do. And this is one that I put down from my own perspective. I've been to a couple of weddings in the last few years where the celebrants couldn't pronounce the bride or the groom's name properly, their surname, which is, you know, you've got, I was going to say it's your one job, but like, it's the biggest job you have to do, get it right. Especially because it was the groom's name, and the bride was taking the groom's name, and she couldn't, she stumbled when she was talking about Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so. Anyway.
I was just going to say, Mel, sorry, before you jump ahead, that if you guys end up downloading the report, the way that we got that last slide was the left-hand column was distilling the main message from all of the 5-star reviews that had been left for celebrants across the year, and then the right-hand column was distilling the 1-star reviews that were left for celebrants across the year. So it's really valuable data, and not difficult to implement and to meet the expectations of what couples are wanting from their celebrant.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and this one's just talking about, you know, we asked our celebrants what social media platforms they're using. Most of them were on Facebook and Instagram. We're finding that Facebook is more of an older audience, and Instagram is sort of more for a younger demographic, where, you know, there's ability to share more photos, and that creates that sort of vision that we talked about before, that vision board. But obviously with the younger demographic being the sort of the older Gen Z, they're sort of a lot more present on TikTok, which down here we found that there was only 5% of our celebrants being active on. Something to think about. It's not something that everybody is comfortable with, particularly not just yet. It's quite, you know, it's still an emerging platform, but definitely, you know, you want to be where your demographic lives. So TikTok and YouTube are not being utilized very much by our current celebrants, but it's definitely something to think about, particularly as technology emerges. And Beck, do you want to talk about this, the buying cycle?
Yeah, so this is it's not a hard science, but it's a really great guide as to where different categories sit in the buying cycle for couples planning all of their services. So obviously the first thing that a couple does is they pick a venue. If they need a wedding planner, they'll pick that as well, and catering. Then in the second colour block there, you've got the celebrants, photographers, wedding dresses and videography, and then on it goes. So this is just a really great sort of snapshot as to where you fit in the decision-making process of the entire wedding. And from a relationships and networking perspective within the industry, we often recommend to suppliers that they look back to the previous colour block to see the types of suppliers that they could be establishing relationships with for referral business. So in that case, it's really venues where you're best to put your networking efforts into.
And also the same color blocking as well. So you've got, photographers, dresses and videography. If you can make contacts with other photographers and videographers, that's the sort of the same time that couples will be putting inquiries into those sort of same groups around about the same time. So yeah.
And just on that as well, Mel, I did see a question pop up earlier about how do we get photos when we're first starting out. Networking with photographers in the industry is a really good strategy. Obviously, for the first wedding that you end up booking, making sure you are friendly with the photographer so that you can see if you can use some images from the day that, professional images. It's the beauty of this industry. There is a professional photo taken of every wedding, and we're really fortunate in that regard. But before that happens, it might just be navigating some of the nicer stock sites to build your profile, build your social media. Obviously, your own personal shots as well to get that authenticity in there. But you might also seek out if there's like a styled shoot that's happening or that you can help to organise or be a part of with a few key suppliers in your area.
And just onto what Beck said as well, a lot of celebrants that sort of I've worked with, and even in my own wedding, before the wedding sort of happens, they usually ask the couple, what are some of your other suppliers? Who are you having for cars? Who are you having for flowers? This, that, so that they can follow them on social media and potentially make an introduction before the wedding happens, so that on the day they already know who they are. They can ask them for pictures, and it just sort of makes that sort of request and relationship a lot easier. So something to keep in mind.
That's a really great slide, that last one, sort of showing where everybody, where they come into the decision-making process. And it's something that we've talked about. It's very affirming, isn't it, Jean? That that ability, like collaborating. It seems that successful celebrants collaborate with other industry people, or they're very good at social media. We see they're either really good at social media or they're very well connected with other people in the area, in the industry.
Yeah, that's really important too. Like if you do sort of make a relationship with a photographer that's at the same wedding that you were at, it's really important that if you're using their material to to tag them on social or just sort of credit them, just sort of builds that trust and that that relationship.
Very good professional etiquette to do that.
Yeah. Also, another thing to raise about this buying cycle, we mentioned earlier that couples are usually engaged for about 22 months. So you think about over the span of two years, if you sort of start from here and kind of work your way through, kind of gives you the perspective of where they might be. So we usually tell suppliers who might be in this sort of section, they might have made an initial inquiry early on in the journey, and then they might not have heard back to them for another 6 months. That's totally normal. But for someone like a celebrant, you probably want to pinpoint, get availability and stuff pretty early in the journey. So before we go, just a reminder of how to find us. So yeah, we're easyweddings.com.au. there's also we've got our socials. So we've got, aside from our sort of Easy Weddings social, this is our sort of for couples. It's all the inspo. It's, what colors are in, what dress you're wearing, what, how to choose music, that sort of stuff. And we've also got this this platform for business, which is Wedding Supplier Network, and that's the platform that I manage. So that's just tips on upcoming webinars, information resources, anything that might be useful to the business community. And there's also a Facebook group as that with that as well. But if you're interested in getting in touch with us, you can email service@easyweddings.com.au. There's our phone number, but easiest way to find us, easyweddings.com.au. This is what our website looks like and a snapshot of the app. If you are keen on potentially advertising with us or down the track, all you need to do is just head to our website, easyweddings.com.au. If you click this, it's a bit hard to read, but this here, it says list your business. It'll take you to this sign up page, and you just put your name and your email and your business name in there, click enter, and then someone from our sales team will be in touch and talk to you about prices and that sort of thing. The price points are different depending on your region and what sort of level you want to come in. Like we have some more premium spots who are that are listed higher on our page than others, and they cost more. But yeah, all the details that we sort of talked about mostly today are in this report. Feel free to scan the QR code and download the report. And we release these reports at the end of every year with a sort of preview of what's happening next year. So this is only just sort of come up in the last few weeks. It's all new data, and yeah, so that's pretty much everything that we can tell you about Easy Weddings, Celebrants, and what couples are sort of planning for their day this year. Yeah, are there? I'm not sure if there is a Q&A section. I can't see if there are questions coming in, but yeah, open to questions if you have any.
Yeah, Mel, Mark Wazasowski had a question. He's asked if, I suppose it's anecdotally, it's kind of a niche question. His question is, has there been an increase in unusual bespoke weddings in weird locations based on adrenaline, adventure, or other passions?
That's an interesting one. It's come up a couple times, actually. There are a few celebrants that I've talked to recently who, I wouldn't say that they specialize in adventure weddings, but the term adventure weddings is a thing. So it's definitely a thing. There's also a sort of movement for proposals, adventure proposals as well. I think it's a lot to do with the, Instagrammable moments, having something spectacular to look at. Could be an hot air balloon. It could be, top of a cliff. So while they're probably not the norm and they're probably not the most common, they definitely, the spectacle is definitely something that we are seeing as something that is happening.
Neil Kemp has asked, are destination weddings on the increase or decrease?
I think yeah, go on, Beck.
I was just going to say, the data that we have for Easy Weddings couples is that they're still preferencing, and it hasn't changed over the years. They're still preferencing a wedding that's in their home state or territory. I think it's only like 2% of couples that are saying they want to get married overseas or in one of those typical destinations. But having said that, now that travel's opened back up and people haven't been able to travel and see their loved ones for so long, I think the next couple of years there will be a boost in couples wanting to go, to Thailand or Bali or those typical resort places where people from the UK and other countries around the world can easily gather for their family reunion or the family holiday with a wedding on top.
And I suppose, Beck, that refers to what you were talking about before in regards to venues and being aligned to local use, whether it be through wedding circles specifically. Yeah, that's a big thing up here, like I said, and in Queensland being part of close knit, but they tend to produce a lot of weddings for the celebrants that are involved in them.
Yeah. I don't wonder if it's once the couple have put their trust and their faith in the venue, then they're then asking the venue to give them some recommendations. So they've got that first, I guess, beginning point with who or what other providers they're going to ask to participate in their wedding. So it's always a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, venues definitely, they do hold a lot of power.
They do. And I think the other thing too is, Beck, in certain venues, depending on what the venue's like, there are some venues that are so very spot on and professional about everything they do. It's like doing a funeral. The celebrant then becomes someone who looks like they might be part of the venue. So the venues are looking for that celebrant to perform the way they would expect all of their own staff to perform, if that makes sense.
To make sure that they're aligned with their reputation. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Beck and Mel.
Hey.
I've been using you guys for quite a few months now, and I've had a lot of referrals from you, which I really appreciate. Fantastic. One thing I've always found when I've received a referral from you, I've been straight away on the phone, just to basically sell myself there and then. That's how I've usually got the business. But I do have to say I've had a couple that have either got an invalid phone number or an invalid email address. So do you do a check at all when an inquiry comes in, or is it just put straight out there?
I don't believe we do, because we don't really touch, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Beck, but I don't think we touch a lot of the data that the couples give us, because we sort of leave that up to the supplier to follow up with. But I noticed that, like, in my own data collecting, even when we host our own webinars, when people register to join our webinars, they put their own email address wrong. So it's not so much that they're trying to give you the wrong information. It's just people are in a hurry, multitasking, that's just, it happens. I find, sometimes Google helps. Again, if they've given you a wonky email address, but the phone works, maybe send them an SMS, or, there's usually we can find people, you got social media now. Like it's sort of it might look a little bit sus if you try and send them a Facebook message and they don't know who you are, but there are other ways to find them if that's an issue. But but to answer your question, Easy Weddings doesn't usually sort of monitor the information to come through that make sure that it's legit or not. It's sort of up to the supplier to sort of self-manage that.
Okay. Hey, listen, I appreciate what work you've done for me in the past. Okay. Cool.
That's great. Love to see it. Hope it continues. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers, man.
Thanks, Peter. That's a great question. Anyone else want to just chime in and ask a question to Beck or Mel? Well, look, I think we're coming to the end, so I just want to say, Beck, thank you so much, and Mel, for being with us today, and for the annual report, a great source of inspiration to all, myself included, and so all the work that you do.
You're welcome.
Jean,
Thank you for having us.
Oh, I just wanted to say how lucky we all are, because I'm feeling it, so I hope everyone else is too, to actually be on live with Beck and Mel, and to listen to all of the statistics and trends that they've given us, as Adam said, but to actually have them here live. I mean, we see your emails come through, we see your names on the bottom of the emails, but yeah, we so appreciate the hour that you've given us today, so thank you both.
Oh, you're welcome. You're all very welcome. It was our pleasure. We've loved being here and spending the time prepping to share some of our knowledge with you. So I wish you all the best with your accreditation and making your way out into the beautiful world of weddings.
And if you'd like to join our Facebook and Instagram, like I said, the wedding business, wedding supplier network is the one for businesses, and obviously the one for couples is just Easy Weddings. So hope to see you online.